So yeah, as I said, Mark Doyle, the Forest Service, and wanted to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know this is difficult, especially in times of COVID. It's just about impossible to get the group together like this, so it's really good to see. I deal with the duty consult and consulting with 25 First Nations and Métis communities just for this Island Forest Plan alone. So the Forest Management Plan, as Bill alluded to, is an overarching 20-year strategic plan. And so my job typically is to work with industry as they develop these forest management plans. And since 2015, when I've been in the role, we rolled out a number of these plans across the province. This dark green area on this inset map here is what we call a commercial forest area. And in 2015, Pascal Porcupine had their first forest management plan approved for this area. Followed that up with this area here, which is called Prince Albert F&P or Segal, and they had their forest management plan recently approved. I also was involved with the Mystic forest management plan, the Topo forest management plan, and the Carrier Northwest forest management plan. And so, this most of this area will soon be covered by 20-year forest management plans. And this area, the Island Forest that we're talking about tonight, is different in that there is no industry component that's leading the development of the forest management plan. It's being led by the Forest Service. And I guess I talked to Dave before about my elevator pitch about the forest management plan for the Island Forest. And it's that while there's legal requirements for the licensees, the proponents, to have an overarching 20-year forest management plan to maintain their license, there's no legal requirement to have a strategic plan for the Island Forest. And there's two types of plans. So there's the forest management plan, and then there's Bill's area of expertise is the annual operating plan. So yeah, my elevator pitch is that the Forest Service thinks it's a valuable thing to do. There's no legal requirement to do it, but we're doing it anyway because we think it's good in forestry and anything really to have a long-term strategic plan guiding your short-term action.
So, if I mean, in essence, what you're saying is this is going to go on whether there's a forest management plan in place or not. This is being done more in advance of the other proponents, so that they don't have to do a forest management plan in advance because it's not required for the Island Forest.
What I'm saying is that there's no requirement for this plan to exist. The annual operating plans would continue to exist regardless of this plan or not. So we think it's good to have it to guide those subsequent plans. What else is going on?
So who owns this land?
It's Crown land, owned by people in Saskatchewan.
Okay. Are the other areas that are already harvested that you said are marked for harvest, are they Crown land also?
It's also Crown land, but they have term supply licenses. They're 5 or 10-year licenses for the area to harvest.
From industry?
Industry has those licenses.
And the pulp mill has no licenses or did anything yet for this forest?
Not the pulp mill itself, but is that right, Bill?
You mean the pulp mill in Prince Albert?
Yes.
Yeah, currently they don't have a license. They've been given an allocation if they take certain steps to get the mill operating. So they will have volume down the road if they do the works that are required to have the mill up and operating.
So the other ones you just gave them their licenses with no input from anybody? And these ones, you want to talk to us first before you give them a license?
No, all of the plans that have been approved have gone through the duty consult process.
Okay.
I think one time I looked at it, I think there's 209 First Nation and Métis communities in the province, and in dealing with these communities, I've talked to 170 or so of those
Yeah.
communities. So the consultation, it's a long process to get one of these plans approved, it's between 2 and 5 years. And actually, we started this plan development in 2012. And we've gone out for consultation with the communities, I believe 6 times at the different stages of the development of the plan, so.
If I may, but, we were overlooked.
Yes, Crutwell, Métis Local 66 was only incorporated in 2018. Most of the engagement occurred prior to that. Actually, all the engagement, with the exception of this opportunity, occurred prior to Crutwell becoming official.
Well, as far as I'm aware, our section 35 rates don't expire, though, like, they still apply, do they not?
Sorry, I don't know.
Well, I'm sorry, we'll just continue on with it, that was.
And so I think the other thing I would like to highlight about this plan and all forest management plans is that, if and when this plan gets approved, it doesn't permit any on-the-ground action. So it doesn't say that, plan's approved, you can go out tomorrow and harvest this area. It's just a guide, it's an overarching plan with strategies on how to harvest the forest, renew the forest, and manage the forest.
Can I ask one question just before you go on? Okay, in some of the areas that have already been more or less cleared out or whatever, has anyone gone back and followed up to see exact impacts that it has had on that? Is there any follow-up stories that, how it impacted the vegetation, how it impacted the animal life, the fish, the lakes? What about the weather changes?
Climate change is a big one, and it's one that we along with everyone, are struggling with how to address. We do have a strategy and some ideas in the plan that, address climate change. As far as following up on areas once they're harvested, we do renewal surveys to ensure that areas are coming back to a similar composition that they were prior to harvesting.
Have you ever seen that happen?
Yes, actually, Holly is the silviculture forester for the area, and she'd probably expand on the assessment process.
So we have 2 surveys that we do over essentially 14 years. So between year 4 and year 7, we go in and do what is called an establishment survey. So we cover the ground with plots, and we measure all the different trees that are there on the site. At year 14, typically, we go back and we make sure that those trees meet a certain criteria. So we have criteria for density, that you have enough trees on the block to make up a future mature stand. We have acceptable tree species, so native boreal species. Do you have the right height to make sure that these trees are going to make it into that next future stand and not get sort of competed out? And we look at stocking. So stocking is sort of how it's distributed throughout the block. Is it even? Is it patchy? That kind of.
And what about the animals? Do you survey if the animals have come back? Do you check out and see if the fish are still, do you survey if the little streams and lakes are still viable? Do they have life? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who does those surveys?
It's not me.
Because the areas that have been cut, my girl walks on them, and she's walked on them before they got cut. They're not the same. They're different. They,
Very different.
without life, like, and, yeah, go ahead.
Just in the back here, they replant, like the fire went through, and it was replanted. That is not the same. You can't walk on there. Like, we used to play there as kids, that was actually our playground. But now, it's got rows where the tree planters have gone.
Scarification.
Those are still there, yeah.
It was all
They're still
scarified.
walking like that.
So
And they're deep.
Yeah.
The berries and the medicines don't come back
They
at
don't
all.
come
You
back.
can totally destroy it.
Yeah.
In places where I used to pick before, like, this is only about 5 years ago, I used to go pick rat root and sage and blueberries, like
Nothing.
there's nothing, there's not even one root. I mean, it's just, oh my God.
Right.
And that's what they're getting rid of, the trees are disappearing and so is everything else.
Over there, the trees, you can't tell me any forest is planted in
Yeah,
rows
like, I
like
mean,
that. Straight rows. Like,
there's not even, I mean, there's nothing there, there's not even no moss, no.
So would things like this be picked up in the renewal surveys and say if, you know, if things aren't coming back the way they should, after the 4-year assessment, do you reevaluate and
Yes.
adjust the whole?
So what we do, is at establishment time, we deal with the survey. If the calculations come back that it's NSR, so it didn't meet maybe height or density or stocking,
Yeah.
one of those criteria, then we need to look at what the next treatment needs to be to get it to
NSR, that's non-sufficient renewal?
Yes, sir,
Okay.
not sufficiently
Yeah.
regenerated, and so,
You got a lot of it here. You got a lot of examples right around here.
right,
You guys need to come in here
This is a
and walk the
this is
bushes.
a tough spot to start off with because we've seen the negative impact
Yeah.
and firsthand, and just to give you an example, like the whole area was logged. And then there was a commercial aspect to the way it was, you know, they went in and they scarified first. And our people lived here, you know, and we've got artifacts scattered from the scarification. And it didn't come back the same as the ladies reflect. Like, can you imagine an area where you go and you can't, you know, you're picking berries as part of, that's what we do at that time. Nothing came back. You know, and it's not just us, we can't even take them because we gotta leave for the bears, we gotta leave them up for the, you know, and these types of things. They replanted this whole area, all the way through here, with one type of jack pine. They created a monoculture from one side to the other, and then it allowed for the jack pine, the mistletoe, to take hold, and it swept through. So, in essence, we are in a constant tinderbox condition. We have to live here. You know, we were evacuated in 2001, then again in 2018, and that's just not normal to have overlapping fires that close together.
yeah.
And also through the let it burn policy, I was there, I was out there, I saw they let it burn. A lot of the regen, the stuff they had replanted, they let it burn. And it wasn't old enough to regenerate.
Yeah.
So now we've got, this is all, it's barren.
Right.
You know, so this is gonna be a tough crowd, I'll tell you right now, because we've seen it firsthand.
We're living in it.
Yeah.
So even the little streams where we used to, you know, the kids used to, there's nothing, there's absolutely nothing. All there is straight.
And we see
Nothing.
it across the world. We see it. It's not just us. We're living in it. But we're not the only ones living in it.
Yeah.
So when you're saying that you have a plan, there are so many plans that aren't working. They don't work, they don't
It's
work,
another
they don't
plan.
work, they
So
don't.
what in essence we're asking is, at what point do you reevaluate and adapt and overcome for the current conditions?
Okay, so just to, I guess, get into that question a little bit, with this forest management plan, we have a couple of things that are gonna trigger that. And one is our annual report, and that's gonna be publicly available, so you'll be able to see it. And essentially we have indicators.
Indicator species? Yeah.
No, indicators related to silviculture practices and how they're actually performing on the land base. And so you'll be able to look at those indicators.
None of them are good. It's, what is it, fair, poor?
No, this is different, yeah.
Oh.
This is a different report than what I think you're referencing. And so this is actually going to have some tables and some figures to look at and a little bit of text to explain the patterns and the trends over time. And we measure that over the life of the plan.
You got it on paper and measurements and everything. We live here.
Right, so the
We're
other-
giving you qualitative information for your surveys, because you not only do quantitative, right, the numbers and all that, you have to include qualitative, what we are giving to you. This land is a lie. This is my relatives, I'm sorry, you know.
Yeah.
They keep us alive, and once it is gone, what have I got to give to my great-grandchildren? How can they walk out in a bush where they won't even know what a bush is and what wild animals is. She still sees the wolves go through the backyard, so they're still out there. They go by about once a month, right?
Once a month, every 2 months.
Once a month, yeah. So we've still got some wild animals, and there's still some water over there, but you want to do around Bennett Lake, not so much and everything. But Culligan Lake is an area right here, that's a track ground, that's a track line, whatever. And all of these you're right down to the river, what's up with that? You know, those are our relatives in the water also. All of the fish, all of those little lichens, all of the little teeny plants that are growing along there. It's not just the big deer that you see, but when he's talking about the silviculture, I mean, one monoculture, what are the deer eating? I've seen them in town, you know, with this cold weather and the deep, deep snow. There's no plants for them to eat. They can't dig up anything, there's nothing there. They're starving. I bet you, and we can't go out in the bushes right now and look, the snow is so damn deep. Well, Dave probably would be doing it, Dave and Karen out there. But I mean,
Yeah, with this thing too, my dad was a sawyer. We moved from sawmill to sawmill to sawmill, clear cutting. And I went back a few years back from, like I was 3-4 years old. Like the thing is still the same, there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. The trees that they planted there are, I mean, there's nothing there. There's not even one berry there. We used to eat there, we used to fish there. Like there's nothing. And that was
we're
52 years ago.
Okay, I'm 66 years old, and I remember, like, I moved here when I was 2. I remember when I was 5, 6 years old, where the 2 highways meet the old highway and the new highway. That was a clear cut when I was a kid. And they planted jack pine in there. Well, I think I can still reach the top of those jack pine after, say, 60 years. They should have been like humongous. They're not. They've grown to maybe 12 feet. Some of them did get wiped out by the fire, but there's still lots of them there, and they're just not growing. The vegetation we had at the bottom there, we used to pick blueberries in there and some other kind of berry, and they're not there anymore.
where you plan on cutting it?
10 degrees all the time, so I pull it down and pull it up. Sorry.
No, that's okay, I just want everybody to see.
That one area where you plan on cutting to, or where is an area where Barbara said, it's kind of like you don't want to tell the areas because everybody's going to go in, but everybody does. That area supports like 20, 30 people going in picking berries every year. And she sees that, she's seen deer, she's seen bears, she's seen lynx and all those things. You guys are going to go in there and cut.
Well,
That's
Yeah,
gone.
there's nothing. I mean,
Yeah,
nothing comes
it's
back
gone.
at all.
Like where I live right now, I'm about, what, 10 miles, eh? From here, north of here, by Round Lake. So I go behind Round Lake and I pick, and the road that I come on, it's guaranteed just about every time I go, I'm gonna see 1, maybe 2 bears. Every time I go. When I go on the one area, what we call the V, in between there, I've had about 5 or 6 bears rush at me because I'm in their area. And you know how they snort and they're warning you they're there? We've had them do that quite often. We've seen cougars, lynx, all kinds of things over there. Where I am in the farming area, there's nothing there. I get wolves that come in the next field, but the bear's not allowed to stay over there. I might get a bear once every 2 or 3 years in my yard. But when we go picking blueberries, it's guaranteed there's lots of bears and different animals in there. Last couple of years, we've hardly seen anything. So, I don't know. But there was a big clear cut in there too, eh? Like not a big one, but sufficient enough that the bears aren't coming around in that area.
And I mean, it's time to start listening to the people, not us listening to your plans, us telling you. Because like I said, it's happening across the world. And it's getting it's very scary. We know that climate change is coming, but why help it along? By cutting close to the water edges and all this, what are you gonna do for erosion? For soil conservation and that in different areas. I know there may be disease in that. And they talk about the fires. That area that was supposed to be taken care of behind there, that's a fire trap if there ever was one to have again. And that's been how many fires going through there? I never used to be able to see across to the other, there's a reserve across the river. I can see across there. Never in my life. We lived in a little log cabin just down the road there. That's where she was born, like, not born, she was born in town, but she came out and went into that little cabin. And we were down by the creek there. We used to get our drinking water. There's not too many places that you could say you can run over to the creek and grab water and drink water. We got our water from there. I don't know. I just know that these are our relatives and that they give us life, and that when we start messing with this wheel of life and we start plucking out animals and we think they don't mean anything, it affects it. It affects us. That relationship that we have with this earth is not just, it's real. It's real and it's life-giving and it's life-supporting. And it's time to listen to Mother Nature, okay? And there are sustainable crops that can be looked at that would provide wood, that would not wood, but building materials, you know.
They're gonna be what, like forever?
Yeah.
I was watching a documentary there, this one lady, some sort of a plastic or something.
Yeah.
It was Lady Carpenter anyways. They were talking to her and he said, well, lift that big slab, it looked like cement. And he just picked it up like this and it's a styrofoam and it will never rot, it will never get wet, it will never get moldy. And still they're cutting down the trees. I mean,
For us, there's a cognitive dissonance we can't understand. And there is no understanding what's going on. They've shut down the oil and gas industry in advance of global warming, or what are we calling it now? They changed the name from global warming.
Environmental thermostat.
Climate change.
Weather change, or weather,
Climate change.
climate change, it's, and for us to, okay, we've got a plan here, and global warming doesn't really seem to play a factor. We're discussing, forest law, they'll either come back or they'll revert to a fescue grass or something to this effect. So you're already making provisions for changing the ecology of that area permanently. And it's okay. Okay, well, that's fine, but for us, you know, a lot of the children, a lot of the people, they've gotten away from the culture, and we're trying to reintroduce them through land-based training. And land-based training, the forest is the school, and we have them school, you know, and it's, like I said, cognitive dissonance, we cannot understand what the premise is behind this because it makes no sense to us.
Yeah.
We'll listen and we'll, you know, it is, it's almost like a, you know, in regards to the bison, when the bison ran here, and we could provide, you know, and it wasn't an issue. And then through a colonizational process, they were removed, making, you know, and that was the beginning of the colonization process. We are now dependent on the grocery stores and this and that. And we've seen through with the COVID, you know, there was interruptions with our supply chain, and the cupboards went bare. And when the cupboards go bare, like when the grocery store shelves go bare, I think, you know what, I'm just going to go to there's other options, and it's food security for us, and it's, you know, and to just come in and you know, when we're talking to somebody that sees the only value of a tree is a monetary value, and it's expendable, and it's non-renewable, not the way we do it. You know, we're cutting these big, huge blocks, you know, and where did this, you know, the clear cutting, that's emulated by it emulates the forest fire. Okay, and what are we basing this on? Well, the work of Dr. David Anderson, funded and researched by the British Columbia government for how many years? Well, if his narrative didn't suit, if his research didn't suit the narrative, he wouldn't have been funded any longer. They would have found somebody else to suit the narrative. And it's...
BC's in a fight for their right.
That's where...
For their trees.
Okay, his work doesn't really amount to much because, okay, now we don't see rain anymore, we see weather events. And the biggest and the best logs are always around water courses and hills and this type of stuff. Well, we're removing them. We're going after them first because there's not much of a venue for pulp anymore. Timber and OSB and saw logs, that's where the money's at. Okay, so now we have to deal with the consultation process. Well, even the consultation process itself has been undermined because a lot of these big industries are partnering up with First Nations. And they're overriding the consultation process because you are, you know, anyway.
The people don't know.
The people don't know. Even in regards, we just reiterated here, well, Crutwell wasn't, we were an active local. We've always been an active local. Always. It's just not on paper. But we've always been an active local. And then for you to tell me that, well, no, we didn't consult with you because you weren't an active local. Well, but we still have our Section 35 rights, and you have to take into consideration how this industry is going to affect our traditional rights, or lack thereof. I wanted to provide a platform for discussion, for a quality discussion on this, and for everybody to, you know, and not everybody sees it like me too, or like us. There's other people that are thinking, you know, somebody that's has a new family or something with this effect, well, I need work, pulp mill's coming in, you know, the vision's narrow. But when the children are older and they haven't, you know, anyway, thank you for hearing me.
Can I just ask one more question? Is, do you guys work with the conservation officers, like in regards to wildlife? Do you guys work together, or is that totally two separate?
With the conservation officers, with Fish, Wildlife and Land Branch.
Yeah.
Yeah, they wrote the sections up in this plan that had to do with wildlife to help us identify our indicator species. And Environment Canada is gonna help us do our Canada warbler, monitoring. We made a commitment in this plan to monitor the population density of male Canadian warblers, every 5 years. Also, moose is an indicator species in here, and this winter, Fish, Wildlife and Lands are doing aerial moose surveys in the Fort Alacorn area. So that'll feed into, future versions of this plan. And that's the other thing I wanted to highlight is that, this is a 20-year plan. We redo it every 10 years. And like Holly mentioned, there's an annual report every year. So we recognize that this is not perfect. And the consultation process is not perfect. But we're trying to, for that continuous improvement. And this is our starting point. We're interested in what you guys are telling us. What we've heard tonight is that the renewal and the regen in the area isn't good enough. And we acknowledge that to some extent in this plan. And it doesn't meet our standards. And we have a plan in place to get it to our standards. We also have some innovation, and maybe I'll let Holly talk about the assisted migration trial with that planting different species to assess how they would adapt to climate change.
See, the reason I ask is, the conservation officers, like, we've warned people that there's wolves up here. The conservation officers said, no, there's nothing up here. Well, they're full of it, because our cabin just down there was 2 of them, a silver one and a black one. And they come around, and it's like, we know where they are. They're way back behind Goldie in that row, like where all the bushes. But they do their territory rounds, as you would say, because they killed the deer right on the road back there. They left it, and it was wolves. And when my husband was walking back there, he actually had one follow him up, and that's just straight on the main road. And then, my dad's hunted and trapped here all his life, and I always thought he was crazy because he said he caught fishing. Well, it wasn't until about, I'd say about 2 years ago, there was one running on the main road here, like a fisher. I thought I was seeing things. I thought, no way, they're like, and then I thought, well, Dad said, yeah, he caught one. And I'm like, it's gotta be a dog, but no. A dog doesn't run like a little weasel, you know what I mean? So that's.
As a fisher?
It was a fisher. Yeah.
That's
And those are not
signature species.
under.
Rare, like you, all my life, that's the first time I seen one. I heard my dad talk of it, but
But they've been kind enough to hear us out, and I think I think we left off with you, Holly. I'm sorry, when you've got.
Sure. Well, I guess, it depends on really what you guys want to talk about in terms of silviculture. So, Mark had mentioned the climate change or the assisted migration trial that's established on the island forests and a couple other sites on another forest. So we have 3 sites that were established in 2013. And what happened was there's a computer program, and it helps you determine where you should be getting seed from for your future climate. So we did this for Saskatchewan and the island forest in particular, and we got seed from Ontario, the States, from other places in Saskatchewan. These were all predicted to have a similar climate today to what we might experience here in 100 years. So we have planted those. Jack pine is what they are. And Lily Plain, there's one of the trials established in Lily Plain. And one up in Kenwood, and then another over in Fort Alacorn. And there have been some remeasurements. So we've planted the seedlings. We measured twice now. And so we're going to this winter we just finished measuring last spring. We're going to get that data analyzed and see if we can start seeing some trends. So is there a particular seed lot that is performing better in the island forest? And might it meet a future?
But wouldn't, like the soil structure here is so fragile. Wouldn't you, like, I guess if you went into stands that are still doing well from this area, wouldn't you, like what do you call it, heirloom seeds kind of deal? You know, they're predisposed, they're genetically streamlined to grow here. Why would we bring, and I do understand, like you did mention, they're from a warmer climate, right? So you're taking into consideration the climate change.
Yeah.
But reintroducing something to this area, it's not genetically streamlined for the soil structure.
It's killing off the other stuff.
Well, there's invasive species too, but I'm sorry, we can
No,
hear
that's
you.
okay. I'm not trying to interrupt. So the idea is behind the assisted migration is that perhaps temperatures are going to change faster than what trees can naturally adapt. So rather than have these areas, or I guess instead of having the jack pine here stall out or die or not be able to move fast enough, what we're trying to do is figure out, okay, so as the climate changes, what should be here? How can we help it get there faster? So it's not necessarily a north-south shift, but what we're trying to do is just figure out, one, is this going to help us keep the forest productive in terms of growth and being viable forest land? And two, which one is the best and which one is going to perform here better? And so I think that this is an interesting study or trial that's been established, and we're going to maintain the measurements and doing the measurements in the future. But we also have, I believe, some sites that were done similar in Manitoba and Alberta. So there's an ability to draw in data from other places as well to see how this is going.
Excuse me, I'd like to go in your backyard and grow some spores from a different part of the country. And then in the other part, grow a different set of spores. Like, to me, it's like you're experimenting right in my backyard with something that is so dangerous. So, that's where we just lose sight of. I can't wrap my mind around.
So the jack pine seedlots, are still coming from the boreal forest. Maybe not the boreal forest here in Saskatchewan. Some of them are, and we're trying to determine if those are viable. But we are trying to, and this assisted migration is trying to keep the native boreal species on the landscape. But maybe the seeds that, or the trees that are adjusted to this growing condition aren't going to be adjusted in the future when the climate changes.
So are you talking of corridors that you're building for the wildlife to live in when the climate change happens? That all these species will have a safe refuge that they can go to? Is this what you're talking about, corridors? Are you talking about corridors that will grow, that can be harvested, that can be used?
But I don't think I used the word corridor, but this trial is just to help us determine if this is something that's viable in terms of a climate change strategy. If it is viable, then in other places, or in the future, you would roll it out so that you could help move tree seedlings where they needed to go. Everything that we do for silviculture is for a future forest condition, and that future forest condition isn't always for harvest. So the forest management plan has to make sure that one, yes, there is timber available for harvest, but two, that the species that are featured in there, there's habitat for them now and then and over that 100 or 200-year period. So we're not going into a site and looking at it for just one purpose. We're trying to do the best thing, and the best thing is to try and maintain the types of trees that you have on the landscape in a similar abundance.
So are these trees then that are not growing, that are planted in one line, straight lines, are those the ones that you are studying? Are those the trees that came from a different area? The ones that where nothing else is growing? Are those part of the?
No, these, just to be clear, the trial areas are very small. They're only,
Well, who did that then?
I'm not 100% familiar with the area that you're talking about, but the Forest Service took over the silviculture in 2019. So we are doing the treatments on the ground for the last couple of years. Before then, it has been contracted out to a couple different parties over time. And so our focus when we go out to see these areas, one, we know that there's NSR, so we're going out to some of those areas to see what sort of retreatments have to happen. We're doing our establishment and regeneration surveys so that we are confident that the treatments that we're doing are successful and putting trees back on the landscape that are going to create those future forests. And for the fires, and you mentioned it earlier, we're really just focusing on the regeneration that burned. The mature timber that has been burnt, there is a seed source there, a local seed source. It will come back, it will naturally regenerate. But for those young stands that we treated, that had fire go through, we do want to look at those and try and retreat them the best that we can. So it's not a guarantee that every single piece is going to get treated because really the obligation for silviculture is for harvested areas. We're following the harvest and treating those areas as quickly as you can after harvest. So, but we do recognize that there's some opportunities to grab some of the areas that burnt and treat them as well.
I know, I respect all of that knowledge and all of that hard work that went into that hole. I mean, there's a lot of people that did a lot of work to do that. But I also respect the knowledge and the wisdom of the people. So I'm glad you guys are consulting with us. Are you going to listen to us? Or is this kind of a done deal and you're just being polite to us and making us feel good? Do you know what I mean? Is that?
I can speak to that. So yes, there's several, we understand that there is this traditional knowledge out there and we want to have as much as that in the plan as we can.
And there is, I acknowledge there is a lot there, but.
And so we have a number of processes. The duty consult is one of those processes. It's in the consultation. What the question we're asking is it's a confining question. We're asking about rights in consultation. But that doesn't mean that we can't hear other things and incorporate it. We also have opportunities. We have engagement opportunities. We've had public community meetings throughout the plan, and we've established a public advisory group. And I'd welcome, a member of this community. I'd welcome a member of this community to put their name forward to sit on our public advisory group going forward. If there's an interest there, that's another opportunity for engagement. And there'll be more opportunities for consultation with the operating plans. But it is a relationship. We're not going to build this relationship in one meeting. We're not interested in harvesting your trap lines or harvesting areas where we put berries, and we want to get to a point where we have the relationship where you feel comfortable sharing that with us, so we can protect it.
I just want to say one quick thing. You wanna see the difference between man-grown trees or tree planted areas and a natural growth area? You go down to pasture, what we used to call the old pasture, that was prairie land. Those trees that are growing there grew natural, and that happened within the last 20, 30 years. Then you go across the highway or just on the highway where the trees are planted. What were those, 60 years you said? Or, thinking about that area.
Yeah, well, maybe 55 years.
Yeah, and you can already see, like the natural grown trees are the ones that grew natural there, grew twice as fast as the planted ones. And it's like right there. You
I
understand?
think there's a sign there that, I don't know if it's still there, but it said something about dwarf mistletoe
Yeah.
control or something like that. So they had planted these trees in, and they were just tiny, tiny when I was small. And my parents took us for a walk in there to show us. I went back when I was 12 or 13 picking blueberries in there, and it was like, these things didn't grow. Are they stunted or what? They must be dwarfs like they're talking about. We didn't know.
Well, and what she's talking about, the pastor is Harold Cameron, her father.
My father, yeah.
They were some of the homesteaders here in Crutwell, right? And his pasture was a 99-year lease, and where he had his horses and that. And then when he died, they took the lease. I don't know if they're selling it or what they're doing, but that's the tree she's talking about.
Yeah, it was all prairie land, and now those trees are growing up and they're just about reached the ones as planted ones.
So that'd be something to study.
It would be, actually, we do field tours with our public advisory group, and it would be good, interesting to take a, move out to those two sites and talk about that.
Well, they've already stripped our forest, like our, what I call the ancient trees, our spruce. They were like that, they're gone. Just, they come in there, log them out, gone.
That was after the blowdown, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And then, but there was still lots of healthy trees, and it was only supposed to be salvaged. I don't know who was watching. I went away to work and I come back and they took everything.
Yeah.
it's all gone.
Anyway, that's, sorry, just a side note,
But I mean, and there are other viable answers. The people have them, industry where it could, technology, if it could work for all of us. That relationship you're talking about is.
well, I feel we're off to a really good start. We know each other. We've spoken our truth. There are a couple, I would like to know, how big of a role does Heritage Branch, or are you guys, do you consult with Heritage Branch in regards to the known sites?
Yeah, when logging areas are proposed, the Heritage Branch has a look to see if there's any known heritage resources, so if there's something in there. But a lot of that is geared around probably the knowledge about the waterways and such.
Are you familiar with like the south side of the Fort LaCombe in the James Smith area there? We actually, when I first received the duty to consult, we went out and we toured some blocks, because I haven't been in the bush in a long time. And I don't know we used to bunch the trees and leave them on the stumps. We didn't pile them right up. We'd limb them on the stumps, and this way we didn't have to deal with the slash piles after, and burning them off. And so, like I said, I just wanted to see what you guys were. I'd heard that they weren't utilizing the wood, and we went out there. And the very first clear cut I went to, there was it's called debitage or flake, and it's evidence of a pre-contact campsite. And it was spread out. You could see that it was one area at one time, but it was spread right out. The whole area was just destroyed. And I just, it really speaks volumes as to the amount of like the land use study that goes in, you're erasing, not you. The history is being erased faster than we can record it, you know, and there's still a large, like the history was overlooked, and for lack of a better term, whitewashed in areas like that. And I personally, like I've gone to relocate known heritage sites, and they're off by 250, 750 meters sometimes, because the actual work was done with help me, sexton, you know. So it's not, you know, we have the tools nowadays to you know, there should be people on the ground. These sites are absolutely, they could burn 1,000 times, and you'd never damage it because it's, you know, it's burned before, and a lot of the evidence is below the surface. But you run say if there's a fire line or something like this, you run a bolt, a D9 through there, it's gone forever. It's things like that, you know. That's another aspect, and I don't really see it all. You know, I covered very well in this. That's another aspect that we'll be discussing maybe further in the next consultation meeting there. You know, it's preservation of the known sites as well.
Yeah, if the site is discovered, steps are taken to protect it. And if we know in advance, then we make sure that we cover that site so it's not impacted.
I'll be honest, some of these sites, they wouldn't even be discovered if it wasn't for it. I've been to a site where it was destroyed by some exploration work, and honestly, you know, we wouldn't even have known it was there really unless they had dug it up. But you know, with the new technologies and sensories equipment and remote sensors and this type of stuff, things are different nowadays. But I don't know. I think this has been an exceptional start. No, I don't know. Does anybody have anything to add, or?
There's a lot more discussion, like I think, kind of from the heart right now, do you know what I mean? But there's a lot more to talk about and questions to ask to make sure that I understand and know what's going on here, right? You know.
We do. We'll go home and process, and we'll run these things. Like, there's another aspect of this, like I was mentioning to you. Many of the other locals signed away their duty to consult, and they think that there's consultation being done on their behalf, and there isn't. There isn't. Like I'm going to try to reach out to some of the other locals and just let them know that they. I don't know, but we don't want any more extensions, nothing to that effect, because you guys are going to, you know, you have a deadline as well too, but we can't. That's just time, right? That's a colonial constraint.
I guess what we're fighting against with time now is, you know, we'd like to have this plan in place for the next operating year, which starts April 1st. You know, if we miss that opportunity, it puts us, I guess, a year back behind, and you know, being able to report these things, and like I said, I think you know, even though it's not perfect, I think it's better than nothing, and it'll, you know, there's opportunity to change this, and we're going to revise it in 10 years, and if there's something that is seriously flawed here, we can do it before then.
Can we change some of the boundaries then? If we start consulting like we're gonna have meetings pretty quick, and we let you know some of these areas and get you working somewhere else first?
Yes, the tactical plan boundaries, that's what I would like to focus on the duty consult discussion on.
Yes, right on.
We have to establish our traditional boundaries.
Yes,
Yeah.
because the trap line
It is.
is right in there.
We've got, I don't even want to say how many berry patches we have left, blueberries, and you wouldn't believe the competition. You know, the muskrat, like the bear, you know, and then you got people from sturgeon. Yeah, they're awful. You know, but it is.
even though time is short and it's best to identify it at this level, at this plan,
Good.
if we don't meet that, there's other consultation opportunities that will happen with the annual operating plan when we refine these larger areas into actually, okay, this is where harvesting is going to occur this year. There'll be further doing consult opportunities, and then, you know, we find that communities want to engage in that more, because there's more immediate on the
Oh, what plan? I'm sorry, I missed that.
on the annual plans rather than the 20-year plans.
Right.
It's kind of a big
It's
question.
relevant,
Yeah.
you know, like 20 years, what, according to, United Nations, clear cuts are gonna be finished in 2030. Done. You know, yeah, that's a, so,
You're running out of forest?
I'm sorry?
You're running out of forest?
Wow, I don't know what the, like, I think they wanna save, they wanna save some trees so we can hang our politicians from them.
You know, much as we talk about clear cuts, there are various logging methods that are applicable in different forest types. And the clear cut is the most applicable in the boreal forest based upon what we know at this time.
Applicable to what?
Well, we talked about the emulation of natural disturbance. Admittedly, you know, cutting a forest doesn't mimic the chemical processes and such.
And the removal of biomass and everything else. And
Yeah, but it does mimic in terms of the way
the size.
the size of disturbance
Nothing
that
more.
results from fire.
Yeah.
And clear cut is not all huge clear cuts. There's a variety of sizes of clear cuts to
And
do
there's
that.
a variety of fires too.
Yes.
You know, you've got a crown fire that'll sweep through the top and leave the under, you know, you've got creeping fires that'll, you know, you've got the high density heat fires that'll just obliterate everything. So, and what it does is when it's finished, it leaves the biodiversity behind that you're trying to emulate unsuccessfully. Not you, so much still, you know. So anyway, this conversation could probably go on till about 1 a.m. and what, 2035. And it is, and there's a lot of unknowns. The part that I don't like, that bothers me the most is, it comes across as a calculated risk. We're taking a calculated risk. But you're doing the calculating, and we're taking the risk. And that's all I have to say on this.
Well, what I had wrong, my grandmother.
You're gonna head home?
Yes,
Yeah.
I got 5 grandchildren to go knock out.
Well, okay. Well, you gotta bring a couple of, or 2 or 3, because they're the ones, they're doing the consultations in the future, you know, it's their.
It works out pretty good. We're just about to run out of battery juice on this thing.
That's done, that's
Yeah.
done.